I'm Rob Collings, president of the American Heritage Museum, and right now we're in the museum's PBY-5A Catalina. So the PBY we're in right now was the fourth amphibian Catalina built. It was delivered before December 7th, 1941, so it is a pre-war aircraft. At that time, once we got into World War II, the biggest threat were U-boats in the North Atlantic. So immediately they took the first 10 of these amphibious Catalinas that could operate from land bases and brought them up to Iceland, where they couldn't really operate from the icy waters. They started flying convoy patrol, looking for U-boats, and at one point, the squadron commander, Daniel Gallery, was upset with his guys because they hadn't sunk a German U-boat yet, and he did one of the most probably motivational factors in this. He said, until you guys sink a U-boat, the officers' club is closed. And you can imagine 1942 Reykjavik was probably not a happening place, and the officers' club was really important to the guys. Well, this particular PBY then was out on patrol in August of 1942 and spotted a German U-boat on the surface. It dropped the depth charges and it sunk that U-boat. The message from the radio operator station up front was very simple: sink, sub, open, club. They wanted to get back to their officers' club being open, and they had a heck of a party that night. And this became the first PBY ever to sink a U-boat. It continued on and sank another 2 U-boats for a total of 3, and then a shared kill on a 4th. It damaged a 5th. In total, it's attacked 10 different U-boats in the North Atlantic, making it the most successful anti-submarine aircraft in history. What we can't qualify and quantify is how many lives did it save. We know how many lives it took on those U-boats, but how many sailors made it across the most dangerous part of the ocean? In fact, the most dangerous part of the war. All of the tanks and planes and fuel and food that made it possible for D-Day to happen, for the war to be won. Without that, would the tide of the war have changed? Would it have gone on for a longer period of time? So this airplane is so incredibly important for the war effort and what it did. So the PBY Catalina is a flying boat. It's part boat, part airplane. It's a big aircraft. It's a 104-foot wingspan and over 65 feet in length, but only 2 engines. They're Pratt & Whitney 1830s, same as a DC-3 or B-24. Great reliable engine, but that doesn't give it a whole lot of thrust to go fast. And also you look at it, it's a massive plane, massive wing. So in cruise, you only get about 105 to 110 knots. It wasn't designed to go fast. Keep in mind, it's flying a lot of times doing a patrol of a convoy, and the convoys would stretch out for miles and miles and miles, and it was important that they could go slow. The crew had to be watching for that, but not only were they watching, they were using some very advanced technology for 1942, radar. And when you look down the side of the airplane, it has this massive array of antennas, wires everywhere. That was one of the very first radars ever put into an aircraft. That helped to find these tiny little objects on the surface and go after and successfully attack them and defend those convoys going over. So on these long 10 to 12 hour missions over the North Atlantic, the plane would fly with a 10-man crew. You have your pilot, co-pilot, but one of the most important people is the flight engineer. This goes back to a very different time where the pilot and co-pilot don't even have a lot of engine instruments. They don't have oil pressure gauges, oil temperature, all the things we think of as pilots as being so critical to us. They're all up in the pylon here, up in the wing, in the flight engineer's little compartment. When a pilot wanted mixtures rich, he put a switch, a light came on up in that compartment saying mixtures rich, and the flight engineer would move them. So those 3 were in charge of the operation of the aircraft. Then you have some crew members that are there for the defense of the aircraft. These guns in here, in the waist blisters, are 50 caliber machine guns. The mounts are completely unique to the PBY, in part because their operating compartment was quite small. Once you put this blister down, they had to stay within this area. And you can imagine flying along over the North Atlantic, as cold as it was, having these things open wasn't the most popular thing to do. There's also a gunner in the back with a 30 caliber machine gun, and all the way up in the nose with a 30 caliber machine gun. Their jobs were to keep the heads of the gunners on the U-boats down as they were mounting an attack. Now, to discover the U-boats, you have a radar operator. He's in one of the smallest little compartments you can imagine because this was an add-on to the aircraft once it went into service. You look on the outside of the airplane with all those radar antennas, they're a different color because they were added on after it left the factory. You have to find your way around the North Atlantic. There is nothing out there to tell you where you're at. So you have a very large navigator's table where he was plotting out as they were going back and forth where they're going to, using celestial navigation, using drift sights, and all sorts of very antiquated but amazing technology of the time to make sure they don't get lost out in the middle of the Atlantic. And lastly, you have the radio operator, who has a very cool area. I think the radio compartment's one of the neatest because he has so many different radios that he's operating. For different frequency bands, you have to constantly be changing out units in these radio units. And they're transmitting an extraordinarily long way because they're out on these very, very long patrols. And they're not only talking back to the home base in Reykjavik, they're talking to ships as well. One of the greatest things this airplane could do was coordinate with destroyers. So every crew member had a very, very important role on this aircraft. I would think the guy who was the most popular was the one who was making the coffee and some hot food, because you're in the most extreme conditions you can imagine. Flying this airplane is so special. I mentioned it's slow. It's really slow, but it's special at the same time because you're flying, to me, the most historic aircraft in the air today. This is it. This is the most historic warbird flying with what it did. So every time we start up the engines, every time we lift off, you have this special feeling that you are in the most important aircraft in the air at that point in time. And even though it's not fast, it's just gives you a great feeling.